Namaskar. Welcome to the second episode of Changing India. In the first episode, we discussed our economy from 1947 to 2021. In the second episode, we'll discuss business from 1947 to 2021. Like in the first episode, Akhilesh and I have got two distinguished guests in this episode too. We have Mohan Ranganathan, India's foremost aviation expert, and Tarun Chauhan, one of India's topmost brand consultants. So let's talk to them. Let's find out how business has changed in India. Let's get right to the show. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for joining me and wish you a very, very happy Independence Day. Let me ask my first question, and we'll start with Tarun. Tarun, how was business in 1947?
The thing is, Sujit, it's a answer which is not black and white. It has got no 0-1 logic, because business always operates in a context, and you can't take the context out when you respond to a question like that. 1947 to 1970, we were completely dependent on the government to run our lives. We just got our independence. We are an agrarian economy. We had no industries. So the government set up all the industries in the first 20 years, including newspapers, including everything. Yeah. Therefore, most people were either public sector employees or government employees or working for the government in some way or the other. And there was nothing called private sector then. Then came in the late 70s, early 80s, when people like Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi started opening up the industry. And that is when we started getting exposed to a lot of things. They may not be of world class then, but at least we got exposed to a lot of things. A private sector started moving in. You had companies who were manufacturing stuff which was independent of the government. You had an ECIL, but you also had a Dynora. You had, everyone coexisted very beautifully. And I don't think so there was a extreme argument versus this should be there or that should not be there. Because unless government got involved, the private sector didn't have the capability nor the depth to even set up anything. It's only in the early 90s, after the first economic revolution, is when the private sector actually started moving in big time. I think till then it was highly government dependent. And rightfully so, because we had no money to do anything. Money started coming in slowly. And 90s onwards is when the actual big impact started happening. The first Vajpayee government, which is the BJP government, came in with a lot of infrastructural changes. Manmohan Singh ji came in with a lot of policy changes. So it was a mix of many things. It was not, it evolved and it changed every decade. And every decade it got better. Every decade it got interesting. People like us got exposed to new things every 10 years. It was never the same thing what happened the previous 10 years. So I think it was very exciting, very, very different.
Great. Mr. Ranganathan, sir, before I get into aviation specific questions, let me ask you, what is your opinion? How was business in 1947?
I was not born in 47. I was born in 48. So what I can say is, during my first 10 years, I was almost in a cocoon because my father was a professor in Rasmussen College. I was in the campus. So I grew up with the influence of all the Scottish people who were professors there. So my education was oriented with a lot of open, we had no, what we are seeing today. We had absolutely no exposure to this kind of bigotry. We never bothered. Everyone was the same. But as far as business was concerned, I was never exposed. It was more education at that time and lots of sports. So I wouldn't say that I was exposed to business or aviation scene till the 60s. But one thing right from my childhood, what I had been reading, one of my heroes was JRD Tata. And I still maintain that, I'm going to read a couple of things from his book. just to show you what he said in 1953. It's still valid, you know. That is when Jagjeevan Ram decided to nationalize all the airlines. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was against it, but I think Jagjeevan Ram had to say, and they nationalized the airlines. And this is what JRD wrote, that nationalization would mean bureaucracy and lethargy, decline in employee morale, and fall in passenger services. And we've seen what that did. The second thing he had said, unless the greatest attention continues to be paid to the high standards of training and discipline amongst flying and ground crews, the resulting deterioration might destroy the good name of Indian civil aviation. Now, do you think anything has changed? What he said in 1953 is still training is pathetic, morale is very poor. You know, we don't have a civil aviation policy as such. Now, and you know, the way they treated GRD is what we are paying for today. You know, like it was All India Radio which announced that he is being removed. You know, when they nationalized airlines in 53, Nehru, even though they took major share in Air India International, the government, JRD continued as the chairman, and Nehru did not interfere with them, nor did Indira Gandhi, or you know, up to the time he was removed by Morarji. See, right from the time Morarji Desai was in the government, he did not like JRD, so he wanted him removed. But Pandit Nehru did not agree. But in 1978, the first opportunity Morarji had, he removed him. It was announced in All India Radio, and then JRD got to know about it, and they sent him a letter. The press report was on 11th of February 1978, and they sent him a letter backdated 1st February. You see, this kind of political manipulation to kill aviation was started by Morarji Desai, and the same thing continued. Now, if you look at what Tarun said, things started improving from 1990s. In the sense, prior to that, you had Air India, which is internationally recognized as one of the top brands. Because if you look at the 70s, Singapore Airlines, Cathay, and Thai wanted Air India's help to set up the airline. Look where they are today and where we are today. Yeah. So that is an indication. What JRD said in 53 holds good even today. And when the private airlines started in the 90s, and that is when corruption in a big way started. Until then, the DGCA and the Ministry of Civil Aviation did not interfere the way, like Indian Airlines could run. They had professionals to run it. JRD had made sure that even though he was not there, the team that he set up built Air India into a top-class airline. I traveled because I was upgraded to first class as an Indian Airlines captain, 1998 on the London-New York sector. I can tell you it was a pride of any airline. The first class was absolutely chock-a-block in Air India. See today, it's only the freeloaders, the babus and the netas who travel first class. You know, so the killing of aviation in India was started by the first Gujarati Prime Minister we had, and it continues now. The reason why I'm saying that is you must have all seen the report about Piyush Goyal's rant in the CII meeting yesterday, where he threatened the Tatas. I can tell you that when he says, you know, you bought two foreign companies, but you're anti-national, you are not investing in it. What he is hinting at, I don't think the Tatas are going to invest in Air India. This must be a direct threat because they're not jumping to the orders. You know, so, you know, if I can continue, but the way they are running the aviation sector, they're clueless. They have no policy for the last 20 years. From the 2000 onwards, there's been no policy. First, it was, total chaos. Then Praful Patel killed Air India with the merger, Air India Indian Airlines merger, which was ill thought of. We taxpayers are paying the price for that. The government might say that we are waving off, but who is the loser? Not the government, it is the taxpayer. Yeah.
Correct. Akhilesh, my question to you is, like Tarun said, can we bifurcate Indian business history into two halves, pre-91 and post-91? Can we do that?
I think I would go with what Tarun was saying, Sujit. He rightly pointed out that, it is the government that mattered the most at that point of time. So if you see 1947 and the decade or two that followed after that, let's look at it like this. The government had it all. If you were an industrialist, your influence or your connect with the government or your reach with the Babu and the minister mattered the most. The government controlled it all, starting from licensing to even what you could buy or sell. So it was the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room, and nobody else mattered. At that time, incidentally, with the reach, there were also a couple of other things. There was a more easier sense of accountability at that time because we did not have all this faceless and all those things happening. Laws were simpler, authorities were lesser. The Income Tax Act at that time, the Bear Act probably ran into maybe 300 pages. Today it is into 2,500 pages. So there were fewer laws, there were fewer authorities, but that's also because the control of the government was very direct all the time. And the government kept enhancing the control. If you look at the 1969 bank nationalization, that was the government's control over finance coming through. So at every stage, it was just the government that mattered. It is down the line when they made a complete mess of it and they could not have managed it further. Rather, they ruined the state of the government's economy and we had to even go and pledge our gold, is when they were compelled to change. Otherwise, I think a Babu and a Neta is such a control freak that he would not have even been let anything go out of his hand. When things started improving, they started becoming control freaks again. So it was just a momentary situation that 1991 happened. They had to let things go out of their hand. But now the same sense of being control freaks is back. And so what are we seeing today? We are seeing excessive regulation, excessive authorities, very difficult and excessive compliance. And as far as the businessman and entrepreneur is concerned, the biggest risk in doing business today is the government. At that time, the biggest benefit of being in business was knowing the government. But today, the biggest risk of doing business is the government. You just don't know when you may become the next Vodafone or Idea Cellular.
Correct. I open this question to all you gentlemen. Just a couple of hours ago, when Akhilesh and I was talking to Dr. Arun Kumar, he said license Raj was actually good. License Raj was good at that point in time because license Raj ensured that there was development and the development would reach the last person in the country. Somewhere down the line, the problem is not with license Raj. The problem is with the crony capitalism that license Raj throws up. So, do you gentlemen agree to it? Tarun, what is your opinion?
So let me break this down into a little sharp argument. If you look at 91, I'll talk about the 3 decades that I've been working in the corporate world. Yeah, and I want to build on what Akhilesh said because I think he said something very interesting. My work life started with terrific government controls and then government saying, I don't want to be in the business of business because that is not my core area. My core area is to run the country. My core area is to manage all kinds of welfare programs. That is my core area. Running business is not my strength. Therefore, government decided to get out of various businesses. Some of them are okay. Some of them are very badly managed. The exit of Air India, Indian Airlines, merger, it's a mess. We can write a case study on that. Yeah. So then, for about the next 10 years, there was no government in our life. You never got up in the morning and said, oh, today morning I have to deal with the government. There was no government. So the first 10 years was exit. The next 10 years was no government. And the last 10 years is only government. So you're back to the 70s and the 60s, where constantly you get up in the morning and your fear is not the competition. You don't get up and say, okay, today I have to create a new product because I have to beat the competition. No. Today I have to get up in the morning and say, which guy I have to deal with in which department to protect my interest. GST guy comes, GST guy goes. Some other guy comes, he goes. Some compliant guy comes, he goes. Meaning there are now today people in organizations whose job is to only manage compliant. You can't run an organization spending your whole day trying to figure out who to give answers to where. It doesn't work. I'll give you a simple example, Sujit. We are coming out of COVID. We have we are not able to travel because each place has their own little regulation going. There is no common policy. There is no common view. There is no common agenda. How do things work? Who's driving it? Who's holding it together? Who's saying this is right and this is wrong? We have no sense of that. We just keep hearing few names. Oh, he's doing well. He's bought the airport. He sold the airport. He bought a shipping yard. He sold a shipping yard. And it's only between him and her. There is no third person there. So, it's very complex. It's not very easy.
Mr. Ranganathan.
I mean, you're getting me to say it. I shouldn't be saying it.
Mr. Ranganathan, taking off from where Tarun left, government is not in the business of business. So, privatization of airports, what's your view?
I think it's privatization if it's done with professional. Like if you take the Hyderabad airport or the Bangalore, it's done very professionally.
Yeah.
They are going ahead. Though everyone will be talking of Mumbai and Delhi. Let me give you an example of the Delhi airport when it was bid and they won. Now you got, like we always like to boast that we have everything big. They have one of the longest runways, the new runway they built. But do you know that you can't use 30% of that runway because you got the Shiv Murti statue on the approach path, which is an obstacle. Now
They're building a new runway.
Yeah, now they built that.
Delhi last week, they're building a new runway.
Yeah, they built that statue 65 feet above the normal height, permitted height. But nobody had the courage to bring it down. Like if you go to a place like Singapore or something, they would have brought it down. Because, you build a 14,500-foot runway and you land 1/3 of the runway down the line. And it's ridiculous. That is how they have done it. That's the way it has been done from post 2000. Now, if you read one of the business reports, the traffic, they said that Hyderabad airport has the highest domestic traffic numbers in India. Nobody's talking about that. Now, that is what will recover first, because until international traffic sort of builds up to the pre-COVID time, the others are not going to even make money. And if they don't make money, it is not, I don't even have to name. The State Bank of India will be doling out loans after loans to bail out people and writing off NPAs. Now, Hyderabad is the only airport which is going to recover first. Next will be Bangalore. They are the only two professional. But let me point out why that is very important, because when Air India started first, see, at that time you had Bombay as a financial capital, and then you had New York and Los Angeles. And San Francisco became famous only after the Silicon Valley built up. Till then, the connection was only to Los Angeles. And Air India built up the traffic. They did market survey. They decided which aircraft will be profitable. Air India was a launch customer for the 707 because JRD could think miles ahead, just like what Singapore is doing today. But when these Babus and Netas took over, they are clueless. Every one of them, Air India is more like a valet service. That is why nobody wants to buy it. Every new minister who comes, immediately you will find flights starting to his place. Like when the Shukla brothers were there, it was to Raipur. You will fly a 737 with 204 passengers. And when Gajapati Raju took over, in Modi government, even though they were saying everything is going to be improving, you started flights to Vijayawada, where there's no traffic. And if you look at Air India, it's all Delhi-centric. Everything, it's not market survey. Now, we're all talking of taxpayers' money being used up for Air India. Another place where a lot of money is draining out is the Udan, because the Prime Minister announced that we'll have connectivity. So they start these subsidized flights to small airports. You have 10 and 20 passengers, or sometimes even single digit passengers on those flights. And every one of them, they are subsidized. Now, who's paying the subsidy? Not the government, it's the taxpayer.
Correct.
So we are killing what? If you say that aviation is a professional field, it is not for these babus. Just because they are babus, they may be experts in other administration, but neither the minister nor the secretaries and the babus there know anything about aviation and what is required. Now, if you were to start, look at what Cathay or British Airways or Lufthansa, they focus on Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, because this is the link to the Silicon Valley in US. That's where we have the maximum diaspora traffic, not to Delhi. But they focus only because they have to please the minister. They all
Correct.
want everything. You don't take, like an example I can give you is the 2015 floods in Chennai. Why did it happen? Because Jayalalitha was the one to take the decision for opening the floodgate. None of the others. This is what is happening, what Tarun was saying. Today, none of the ministers, even though you have a team of ministers, unless they get the nod from either Modi or Shah, they're not going to even blink an eyelid. So the whole mess is because it is not only the babus and netas, it is just two people who are taking the decisions, and they're taking orders from someone.
Akhilesh, let's go post 1991. Is all privatization good?
Sujit, before we come to all privatization, I just want to, speak about that issue of license raj and cronyism,
Please.
because we need to be very clear that they are two sides of the same coin. Cronyism is all about favoring a few, and license raj favored a few at the cost of the entire country. If you just take motor cars, we had those two outdated Premier Padmanis and ambassadors being given to us for decades, and we had no choice. So I think, let's be clear, they are two sides of the same coin, and they have been so regressive that our development and progress and industrialization, we have had a setback of a few decades because of that.
Yeah.
Coming to privatization that you spoke of, Sujit, see, the public sector as well as the private sector, to me, comes with its own package of pluses and minuses. They all have their merits and demerits. The choice before the country has to be, what is it that we are going for? Are we going in for privatization, or are we going in for the private sector, or are we going in for the public sector? I would put it like this, that in India, we have made a hash of both of them. We have been hypocrites in our policy making. We didn't have the guts to say that we are going to go in for the capital or the right-wing approach into business. We got a hybrid model to ourselves, and we have made a mess of both. The capital or the right wing was only about cronyism, and the left wing or the public sector was only about appeasing certain segments of society. And in the process, I don't think we got the best of both. Like we were talking in the earlier show, we neither became a US and neither did we become a China or a Soviet Union, because we just tried to be hypocrites in our policy making. I think that's the way I would look at it, Sujit.
Tarun, we are hypocrites in the way we make our policy. What's your opinion?
Oh God. Okay. It's so. I think it is so factual that you can't even dispute it. That is a problem with that statement. Correct. But I'd like to. I have a slightly differing view from Akhilesh on that subject, and it is I personally believe, and I may be wrong because Mr. Ranganathan has more knowledge about this subject. But I personally believe that there are certain core areas. Okay, could be oil and gas, could be I don't know what. There are very core areas where the government has the depth, the knowledge, the investment to work in the benefit of the larger good. Correct. Those are areas where the government should operate, exist, and do whatever they want to do. The rest they must get out. Why do we still have a ministry for civil aviation? We don't even have an airline. That airline we have, half the planes are parked in Bombay airport. So what is the minister for? To sell the airline. So these are stupid things, and that is taxpayers' money. When you have a central minister for an airline, I mean, it is very expensive to maintain a minister.
So
You
this is interesting, Tarun, because I want to just ask you one more question here. This is interesting because you were part of the launch of idea in India. So I want to ask you this same question. Isn't that the same question pertaining to telecom also? What is a telecom
yeah,
minister
why
doing there?
why do you need them? What is their role? They're the commerce ministry. He will deal with the issues if there are financial issues, or there's a finance ministry. What does the telecom ministry do? I don't understand why they're there. First, you say you want to privatize telecom. You kill DOT, you kill BSNL, you whatever, you killed all the government enterprises. Now the guys are running their own shop, Vodafone, Idea, Airtel, Geo. They're running their own. Let them run their own shop. Let them figure out life and settle down. Why are you getting involved in their life?
Mr. Ranganathan, you don't need.
The problem the government does not want to leave control, like Mohan said. They want to travel happy. They want to live in big homes. Therefore, you have to create ministries so that all these things are managed. But what happens in the bargain is a lot of unnecessary things happen, and
So
that causes damage.
correct. One doesn't need an aviation ministry. What do you say, Mr. Ranganathan?
Absolutely. It's a total waste of time because it is just one seat which is blocked for a politician they want to help, nothing else. So the minute he comes, he and his family get first class travel and his chamchas get first class travel, and you and I pay for it. The only thing that I'd like to add to Tarun's thing, he said oil and natural gas. I would also add railways because that is a common man's.
Absolutely.
That should never be privatized. But,
Absolutely.
But otherwise, the government has no business because no, you're talking of the babus. Let me give you an example of privatization that Akhilesh was talking about. Take Jet Airways. It was growing only because of crony capitalism, Jet Airways and Kingfisher. And Jet Airways on the board, just before they folded up, they had 7 board members who were former babus, either civil aviation secretaries or various departments. So what did they do? They only killed it further. So if they can't even make a private airline where they were given a free hand survive, what are they doing sitting in the Ministry of Civil Aviation, as Tarun said? I mean, that is a ministry which should be shut down. You privatize aviation and let the professionals run it. Then aviation will survive. When I was flying in Singapore, they had a chairman, J.Y. Pillay. I tell you, if Air India had a chairman like that, after JRD, I think that J.Y. Pillay was. I was operating a flight and I was with the airport manager at the departure counters. And we saw Mr. Pillay standing in the queue. He was going to London via Dubai. He stood in the queue to take his own boarding pass. And when he came to the check-in counter, he was given a first-class boarding pass. And he pulled up the counter man and he said, "How did you give me the Dubai-London first-class thing?" Because it was -7 on the computer before I came here, I checked. Now, look at the way this man is willing to travel economy. He is checked up, and that is the kind of professionalism they had, And look here, if even a junior level manager is going, a whole marriage party would be there to see him off. They would have blocked off. So unless we have professionalism and transparency, nothing can improve.
Tarun, I want to ask you, is there a difference in the right wing way of doing business and the Congress or not right wing way of doing business? Is there a right wing and a left wing way of doing business?
See, frankly, Sujit, this right wing and left wing is a narrative built by people to suit their basic necessities. Okay, there are agendas. There is no left wing and right wing. There's only one wing, which is how do you run a business profitability and how do you get people to benefit from that business. If I make a car, I want consumers to buy the car and I want to make some money and I want the consumers to be happy. Now, what is right and left wing about that? Correct? If the government decides not to be in the business of business, then everyone is participating in the journey. Everyone is creating wealth. This whole thing of not letting people create wealth is a very blocked mindset. Now, I don't know if that is left wing or right wing, but that's a wrong mindset, and that is currently prevailing. Now, I don't know what you want to call it. Akhilesh will argue. Akhilesh will endorse what I'm saying. The moment anyone creates little extra wealth, there are 8 people standing at his door.
Oh, yes. In fact, let me add to
So
what
what is right
Tarun
and
is
left
saying.
about it?
Tarun, to add to what you're saying, as far as the Indian ethos or the ecosystem is concerned, it's almost a sin if you're rich. You never hear of any interview in Indian media where a billionaire is, interviewed openly to say, "Sir, how did you become rich?" That's a sin to ask. The first thing. The second thing is, let me also tell you, as soon as your profit and loss accounts start showing profits which are above the expected industry benchmark, the agencies automatically are investigating, "Isna aisa itna profit kaise banaya?"
क्यों
They
बनाया?
also investigate. They also investigate if it is below the benchmark. So there is a benchmark. If the expected profit is 20% and you are at 30%, you are investigated. How did you make those profits? But if you are at 15%, again you are investigated. So the entire process of making profits is, you almost feel guilty when you're traveling in an expensive car in India. Even though you would like to say, hang on, I worked hard and I followed all the laws and made my money. So it is a very regressive thought process.
Yeah, it's a very, very stupid thought process, Sujit. Just to add to what Akhilesh is saying, if a company tanks after all the checks and balances, why is SBI paying the money? Let the department pay the money, no?
Correct.
If I'm the monitor and I'm checking the class, whether the class is running properly or not, if something goes wrong, I should be accountable. How can a third person be accountable? That's a problem in India. So if a department messes up an organization shuts down, like Mr. Ranganathan is saying, the NPA is managed by a bank. No, the NPA should be managed by a department. These are things that are very simple but sharp things that India needs to think through.
There's no accountability.
Yeah, you hang someone and walk away. How does it work?
Mr. Ranganathan, wealth creators are villains. What's your view?
I wouldn't say wealth creators are villains.
That's not that. No, I'm sorry. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's the general view. So
that's perception.
Perception.
No,
I'm sorry.
Wealth creators are villains if they are feeding the wrong mouth.
Very well said. Wealth creators are villains if they are feeding the wrong mouth. Akhilesh, I want to know this entire concept of ease of doing business. So if we were to bifurcate again, our country as to two eras of business, pre-91 and post-91, do you think there has been ease of doing business post-91?
Sujit, let's not go by the ease of doing post-91 or pre-91. Let's talk about the current scenario because the government keeps claiming all the time that it has, improved significantly. First of all, let's be clear that all the claims of ease of doing business improvement of the government are based on the World Bank ranking. The World Bank rankings are given to India on the basis of some people being interviewed and surveyed by the World Bank in only two cities of India, which is Mumbai and Delhi. Are we saying that the rest of the India is Mumbai and Delhi? So they only have a few people responding in these two cities and World Bank gives a ranking. So the entire ranking is a misnomer. The government likes to tom-tom it. It's all a tick in the box way of getting a ranking. It's pretty easy. And that's what the government has been doing. Let's talk about the ground reality. As an entrepreneur, what am I looking or what makes me feel that doing business is easy or doing business is not easy? The first thing that gives me ease of doing business is, if at all I say I have ease of doing business, is simpler laws, lesser laws, transparent authorities. Laws in India have only gone many in number. They've gone more complicated. They've gone more difficult to follow. The cost of compliance has shot up. So the first thing that gives an entrepreneur a feeling of ease of doing business, it's only got more jeopardized in India. The second thing is safety of your capital. When you have a situation where you do not know when your contingency liability in GST, income tax, or whichever laws comes under the system, you're bound to not feel that you've got ease of doing business in the country. The third factor, Sujit, if everything goes wrong, you run to the judiciary that protect my rights, protect my capital, protect my profit. A judiciary which takes years and which is so uncertain in the country, which is so expensive to be able to deal with, does it again give you a good feeling? I mean, tomorrow, if you have a dispute, a commercial dispute, and you have to go to court, what do you think? Are you really feeling good and fine? Because the uncertainty and the cost is so much that it doesn't again give you comfort. If you talk about just movement of your own goods and the local extortion that they pay, I mean, truck drivers were interviewed and asked about movement of goods from Chennai to Calcutta, and they are saying on an average, we are checked God knows how many times on the way. They pay a minimum amount of bribes everywhere. Their trucks get stopped for no reason. The entire safety of your goods is in question. Your commercial commitments are in question. So when we talk about these ground realities, let's keep the World Bank rankings away. I don't think I have a feeling that my ease of doing business has gone up. Let's not fool ourselves.
Correct. Tarun, the reason I was asking Akhilesh pre 91 and post 91 is because 91 we proclaimed to the world that we have liberalized our economy. So things are going to be better. We are welcoming privatization. So that was my point. And now, if you look at that perspective, have we lied to the world?
No, I don't think so. It is such an extreme response. What happened in 91 to say 2004 or to 2014? I think life was good. Yeah, life was peaceful. Now, I just want to I want to give a small little example here. Okay, and I want to build on what Akhilesh said with an example. There's an interview of Saurav Ganguly on one of the sports channels. Yeah, and they were playing in England. They were playing the semi-finals World Cup, and Sehwag got 100, and he kept hitting like a madman. And every time Saurav went and warned him, he did something even worse. The only thing he didn't do was get out. Correct. Now, what did Saurav do? Saurav said, "No, let me leave him alone. Because if the more I go and talk to him, the worse he's getting." Yeah. He went on to get so many runs that we won. The point I'm making here is that at some stage, the government needs to realize that they're the Saurav Gangulys. Just get out. Leave it alone. Let people evolve. Let them grow. Let them figure out. If you don't have a good product, you will fail. If you fail, you're out of the market. Nobody gets up in the morning every day to say, today I want to fail. Nobody wants to fail. Everyone wants to win. The problem is, what are you tying on my leg and not letting me win? And like Akhilesh said, it is so complicated. Why do you complicate things so much? You're taxing me on pretty much everything. Even if I buy a pan masala, you're taxing me on that. Why are you charging me income tax? Why are you charging me GST?
Exactly.
I'm not a tax guy at all. But I'm saying, you're charging me at every point in my life. If I buy an airline ticket, you're charging me a tax on that. So I am paying you 24/7 indirectly. Why are you taxing me directly then? So these are little basic things that people have to think through and make the way we live after post-COVID. Sujit, let me tell you, half this country is starving and the other half is struggling. That is the reality. You can throw all the numbers in the world, but that is the reality. The number of unemployed mid-level managers is unreal. What are we going to do about them? How are we going to bring them back in the workforce? Is anyone thinking about it? Is anyone saying, okay, we've got a terrible COVID. There are huge number of youngsters with one child, two children, small children who are unemployed, sitting in rural areas because urban areas, the jobs have gone. How do we bring them back to urban India? How do we create more opportunities? Nobody is thinking about all that. We are still busy trying to figure out what Tata is doing and what Ambani's are doing. And those are okay. Those problems will continue. But those are very small problems. We have much bigger problems.
Okay, my last question, gentlemen, and this question is to all of you all. And I've got exactly 5 more minutes, so we'll have to be concise in this. But Mr. Ranganathan, starting with you, have we achieved our goal? Have we achieved our goal that we set off in 1947? Are we getting there at least?
We are not getting there. We are actually regressing, because only thing that has progressed in India is ego. There is no practical or level-headed solutions, because each person, as far as aviation is concerned, they all want to think big. Nobody wants to think rationally. And we have no policy. We need to have, like what Tarun said, the number of unemployed, number of people who are struggling, especially in aviation. People don't realize that it is a risk, because when you have take, for instance, a pilot in the cockpit whose mind is not 100% in the cockpit. He is never going to handle a situation. It is the same thing everywhere because you're going to take a decision under stress, and nobody can take a decision when he's stressed. And it's always going to be a wrong decision, and that is what we're going to pay a very heavy price. The government, like he said, we are paying tax on everything. They say that only 3% or 5% pay tax. Like he said, everybody is paying tax because you're paying GST on every damn thing. So how can you say that the other 95% are not paying tax? So people cannot afford to buy even a square meal. That is what is happening today. And when when you talk to people who are well off, they'll say, no, the government is doing a damn good job. They don't see the street reality. You can call it anti-national, you can call it left wing, but what is happening today is only the cronies are developing, the rest are all suffering.
Akhilesh, your point of view. I think we have lost Akhilesh. Okay, Tarun. So coming to your point of view, are we in the right path?
Okay, I don't want to sound negative, but I think we've come a long way. But somewhere it's all got very badly derailed. I think there was early 2000. We were emerging as a very strong economy. We were globally respected. People love coming to India. Indians love going abroad. We were all firing on many cylinders. I think most of it is now either standstill or derailed. That's the reality, and that is a real reality.
So with that, I think thank you so much, gentlemen. I think we lost Akhilesh, unfortunately. So thank Akhilesh too. Thank you, Mr. Ranganathan. Thank you, Tarun. Thank you so much for doing this show with me. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
But